Hello, grade 10s. This is our last lesson of the ecology unit. We're going to talk about change over time in ecosystems. When ecosystems change from when they first start developing over time, we call this succession. Succession refers to one thing replacing another. And one thing replacing another in terms of ecology would be the types of plants and animals that might live in an area over time. This would be ecological succession. There's two ways that this happens. One is called primary succession. The other one is secondary succession. And below you'll see a picture kind of representing a possible pathway for each. The biggest difference that you'll notice is the starting point of each type of succession. Primary succession starts where no soil exists. It starts on bare rock. This could happen after a glacier retreats and scrapes all the dirt away. It could start after a lava flow cools and now we just have exposed lava rock. It starts anywhere where raw exposed stones there and there is no soil. So primary succession works when tiny little life forms called lichens land on the rocks and cling to it. Now lichens are those little crusty things that you tend to see on the sides of rocks, and sometimes you'll see them on trees. Quite often they're red or yellow or green. It'd be great for you guys to do a quick Google search, an image search for lichens. As soon as you see a picture, you'll know what I'm talking about. And the neat thing with lichens is they don't need soil to live on. They will attach themselves right to bare rock, and they will start to break down the rock itself and turn it into smaller bits of sand, and then their bodies, as they die and are replaced by other lichens, add to that sand, and this starts the process of making soil. And it's a very long process. It could take hundreds of years for the lichens to break rocks down to get a thick enough layer of soil that other organisms can start to live in it. Now, the first things that start to live in this new soil are called pioneer species. Pioneer species can start to live into this new soil. They need very little dirt in order to live. Mosses are a great example of that, some wildflowers. And over years, as more and more things live on the soil and break down the dirt, what they end up doing is making the soil layer richer, healthier, and thicker, and bigger plants are capable of living there. And with each new type of plant, new animals move in. So primary succession takes a very long time to get to the final or climax community. In this example, we had exposed rocks as our starting point. This was the slowest step of it, making the soil. And you'll notice that eventually larger and larger plants managed to take over until we ended up with a very stable climax community. The climax community is the long-lasting sort of endpoint in the chain of succession. It's a stable community. We notice very little change. So that mature community is called the climax community. And climax communities happen when an ecosystem has reached its carrying capacity. So everything's kind of coming back together here that we've learned over the past few days. Secondary succession is a little bit different. Secondary succession starts when an existing community gets wiped out, but the soil exists. Climax communities quite often start after a forest fire. That'd be a very common way of starting a climax community. Starting secondary succession. We'll also see secondary succession starting when we turn over a bunch of soil to plant a garden or to plant crops in a field, or anytime we get rid of all of the plant life in an area and just have raw soil, we are beginning the process of secondary succession. So that soil already existed. It had organisms in it. It had worms. It had insects. It had all the seeds still in the soil ready to grow. And so this process is a lot faster than primary succession is. So you'll notice that weeds quite often are the first things to grow, and maybe a lot to our chagrin when we've got a garden that we're trying to grow in every spring, we have to go and pull all the weeds out because those seeds are already there, and they tend to be very aggressive and adaptable plants that like to live in areas. But if you let it be over a much shorter timeline, you will again reach a final stable or climax community. Grade 10s, that is the end of our unit on ecology. We've got task 11 for you guys to work on to review this whole process, and I will be talking to you early next week about how we're going to evaluate and figure out marks for you on this unit.